vote no on Amendment 2, and I'm going to vote no on Amendment 2. The first thing that irritated me about the vote yes literature that I received at my home personally, all of a sudden, there is this huge concern about increasing teacher pay.
The Jill and Stacy Show!
We are here with Jeff Whitaker, who's running for school board. We're recapping the school board meeting / political rally that they had.
So I guess there's some disinformation about Amendment 2 and what it really means.
Well, we can read the actual constitutional amendment that is on the ballot to give parents choices and educational opportunities for their children. Are you in favor of enabling the General Assembly to provide financial support for the education costs of students in kindergarten through 12th grade who are outside the system of common public schools by amending the Constitution of the Kentucky as stated below? So you're just enabling the legislators to come up with legislation to help fund students instead of institutions. There is nothing in place as of yet. There has not been a bill or anything put in place to provide any financial assistance to any families for private education or homeschooling or anything. There's no bill in place. This is just a constitutional amendment saying that there can be funding given outside of public education for students. That's all it says. Well, I don't think most people realize the process of even getting bills passed, because they have to be filed, then they're brought into committee, then they're debated, they're altered, voted on, and then they go to the floor. There is a process where many voices are brought to the table and things are discussed before anything goes through. It's not an easy process. It's not a fast process. This is just allowing that process to even occur.
So this is step one of many.
Yes. So everybody's fears around what's going to happen, they're really unfounded, because no bills can even be filed around this. And if you have interest or concerns, but you do think money should follow the child and support the children, then that's where you can enter the conversation through your legislators. You can go to the committee meetings. Those are open meetings in Frankfort. You can participate. They let people testify. So your input can be received in how this actually is rolled out in Kentucky.
So do we want to watch the video on what transpired at the Boone County School Board meeting on October 10th?
All right, we're going to move to agenda item C, recommended action for Amendment 2. I will now open the item up for board discussion. Anyone want to discuss Amendment 2?
I would love to discuss Amendment 2. Board members are in a unique position that we are private citizens, community members, taxpayers with our First Amendment rights to free speech. But when we are acting in our official capacity, and this kind of relates to a question, Mr. Mull, I think you asked about what could we do and what couldn't we do. And we are, in this capacity, we are using something that is called government speech, in that we cannot use our elected public offices to advocate for or against anything political, because this is a nonpartisan board. We are supposed to be apolitical, and if you believe that happens, then I've got some swampland in Florida that just got turned over in the last 2 hurricanes. But as a public citizen, as an individual, not Karen Bird, board member for Division 5, not Karen Bird sitting here on this platform in my capacity as board member, I am not representing the board, I am not representing the district, I am speaking for myself.
My question would be to any legal scholar listening to this right now. Can they actually separate themselves out as public citizens while they're sitting behind that podium?
And being paid with our tax dollars? I don't know. Ask Olivia, who's sitting up there, who is the attorney. Interesting.
Yeah.
Good question.
I don't know the answer to that, but they all make that they all use that get out of jail free card statement that they're doing this as a private citizen. the four of them that make their speeches. So you can go ahead and keep playing.
Well, then they can forfeit their pay from that particular school board meeting. And they can't be in there in their official capacity as a quorum either, huh?
If it's not illegal, it's a breach of ethics that, of course, who's going to punish them for unethical standards? I think really it's just the voters at this point.
Vote no on Amendment 2, and I'm going to vote no on Amendment 2. And personally, I am going to vote no on Amendment 2 for the following reasons. Like you, I see all the information that comes to my house. I hear all the conversations. I read all the ads in the newspapers. If I don't receive it, somebody is sending it to me. I've been working with a network across all of Northern Kentucky, trying to see what information is out there, because we are in the education business and what we do, and it is, I believe, my responsibility to make sure that the community understands what is at stake here. Has anyone heard much about Amendment 1? Well, to have an Amendment 2, you have to have an Amendment 1, but Amendment 2 is getting all the focus. I guess the first thing that irritated me about the Vote Yes literature that I received at my home personally, again, I'm speaking as me, individual citizen, representing myself, was how all of a sudden there is this huge concern about increasing teacher pay. Let me make one thing perfectly clear for those in the back that may not be hearing. At any time in the 30 years that I have sat on this Board of Education, at any time I have watched as a citizen the activities that go on in Frankfort, the General Assembly has always, always, always had the ability to build into the budget teacher pay raises without pushing it down to the local districts, without building it into the seat funding formula, and without needing a constitutional amendment to do so. They don't need a constitutional amendment to fund teacher salaries or school district salaries, period. They can do that now. And what have they done over the last several years? They've turned a blind eye to that. Or they've said, oh, we're going to increase.
Because what she's talking about is if students are funded, then it creates a competitive market for the education businesses, including private schools. And that drives up teacher pay and teacher opportunities. And so her saying that the legislators can give them teachers more money, I mean, I suppose they can, but Karen, they have given you over $21,000 per child that you can give the teachers raises. And that's what they're doing in Frankfort. They're legislating the funding that goes to the school board, and then the school board decides how to spend that money.
The prior meeting, they discussed that the school board and the teachers negotiators came under an impasse for salary negotiations, for a contract negotiation. So, yeah, the school board controls the teachers' paychecks.
So it sounds like an allocation issue.
Well, it also sounds like she's gaslighting everybody.
Well, that too. The given.
Increase the SEEK so that local districts can make the choice whether or not they want to give raises. And
because $21,000 a child's not enough, Karen.
By the time that boiled down through everything, and it's been a couple of years, I think that equivocated to maybe $100. Well, my first question is, why now? Are they so promotive of teacher raises when they've had the power all along?
Because you're misallocating funds from the school board there, lady.
Education, and they haven't done it. My second concern is generally when a constitutional amendment comes about, Amendment 2 has no enabling legislation. In fact, it's written very vaguely, and I firmly believe personally that is deliberate. I think that they are, and I personally made copies and brought these out here tonight on the table if you want to pick one up. This is a fact sheet that the Kentucky School Board Association did. It is just facts. This is a history of how we got to Amendment 2. And I mean, the language it says amendment, they may provide financial support for education of students outside the system of common schools. Now, I would think, if I was trying to think like a vote yes person, saying, well, they may provide financial support means they don't have to, that they just can't, they may. But if you understand the guardrails that they are asking to be removed from our our Commonwealth's Constitution, the particular sections, and I'll read them to you: 59, 60, 171, 183, 184, 186, and 189. All of those have to be removed for them to even be able to do this, to be able to create this system. And it is accurate. Voucher is nowhere in here, but the intent is implied in everything that they're talking about doing. And so I've always considered myself a fiscally conservative Republican. I've voted Republican all my life until recently. I am one of the people who does not believe in big government. And this is a power grab. This is expansion of government by generally leaders who say they're not for big government, but this has got big government written all over it, in my opinion, from the way that I read it.
Okay. Didn't she just say that this is nonpartisan and it's not political? And she goes on to talk about how she's a Republican, fiscally conservative. How is that not political?
The General Assembly, when Kentucky's Constitution was crafted, they gave the General Assembly one mandate in the Constitution, and that was to provide for a system of common schools, which we now refer to as public schools. They had one job to provide for. As as times have changed and systems have grown and things have become modernized, it's expanded to other kinds of services and things like that. But when it comes down to a constitutional mandate, they only have that one that they are required under the Constitution to do. And I am the type that believes the founders of our U.S. Constitution, the founders of our Kentucky Constitution, we look at the times that they lived in, they were pretty smart folks. And they weren't politicians, they were farmers and local business owners, and they ran the corner grocery store. They had common sense, and they believed in their communities and all of that. And to change one section of a constitution, to me, it makes me cringe. But to try to throw 7 out the window just because in 2017, House Bill 520 legalized, and I'm reading direct from this fact sheet, I want this on the record. House Bill 520 legalizes charter schools in Kentucky, but no agreement is reached on public funding mechanism. That's where it started. 2018, due to bipartisan opposition, budget passes with no taxpayer funding mechanism for charter schools. 2020, legislative supermajority once again fails to reach agreement on public funding mechanism for charter schools. We're 3 years in and they still can't get it done. 2021, House Bill 563 establishes education opportunity accounts that can be used for private school tuition in some counties. Bill also removes some autonomy of districts to negotiate non-resident agreements, moving towards an open enrollment model. Now, the next year, the EOA portion of the House Bill 563 is struck down by the Kentucky Supreme
Pause it for
Court
a second.
as unconstitutional.
She's failing to mention that our school board voted to give Center Council for Better Education, CBE, whatever it was, group of attorneys, to actually sue the legislators for trying to provide any sort of funding to any other school besides the public schools. She's failing to mention that. And if you have a child in the public schools and you can't afford private school and you would like that option, because I personally have been retaliated on by all of these people. They are not working for you. And if anybody else has had those experiences, you know what I'm talking about. But I know plenty of people who've actually moved out of Boone County to get their kids out of the schools because they did not have the financing to send all their kids to private schools around here and also drive them to and from. So their best option was to move their whole family out of county. I mean, that's what people are doing to try and get their kids in good schools. But I just found it interesting. She never mentioned. Do you remember that school board meeting where we funded those attorneys with your tax dollars to sue because they were trying to make it to where you could have those educational opportunity accounts?
It was last year. I can't remember. I know Turner was still the superintendent, but I can't remember which month it was.
Yeah, so they'll spend your tax dollars on that.
It was only a percentage, though, right? It was only $1 per child.
Ah,
$20,000.
they did say that.
Yeah.
You're right. They did say that.
Karen Bird needs to work on her history a little further. I mean, the original Kentucky Constitution, adopted 1792. You can look up that Constitution on the internet. It does not mention education or schools or government schools or public or common schools at all in that Constitution. Not once. Matter of fact, it's not until 3 years later that the first school is created in Kentucky. You all you probably drive by it every day if you go down 471. It's Newport High School. Kentucky historians think that's probably the first school created, other than the one-room courthouses that were all over the Kentucky beforehand. And it not until the fourth Constitution in 1891 did they, it took until the fourth Constitution to actually start talking about schools. And the other amendments she's referring to all occurred in the 20th century. So in the progressive era, Marxists were basically coming to take over the government schools.
Well, and I had read somewhere that there is a question of whether or not our Kentucky state constitution around common schools aligns with our federal constitution. And I think there was a case in Pennsylvania because believe theirs was similar to our Commonwealth Constitution. And I believe there was a federal case on that too. That's coming into question, and that may be the next step if it doesn't pass. Well, she's reading off the propaganda sheet from KSBA, which is the lobbying arm for KEA, just so everyone knows.
Why they were able to say it was unconstitutional, even though it passed through our General Assembly, who needs to study their own constitution. So this is why 59 and 60 have to go. 59 prohibits the legislator from passing laws targeting specific areas of the state, and 60 prohibits the legislator from indirect enactment of laws targeting areas of the state. And the Kentucky Supreme Court said by having in that House Bill 563 that they could be used for private school tuition in some counties violated those two sections of our Constitution. And that's when the conversations were going on about Northern Kentucky being an educational desert that Mr. Reed referred to in his comments earlier. 2022 also created House Bill 9, which creates taxpayer funding mechanism for in 2022 for charter schools. The following year, that same bill in 23 is struck down by Franklin's Circuit Court as unconstitutional, and charters were deemed outside the system of common schools. Why was that? Because Kentucky public schools are held to high standards of accountability, of excellence, of being the community's schools, so that regardless of where the child lives, who their family is, what their economic status is, do they have the newest pair of high-top Jordans? Every child, do they speak our language? Have they ever even been in an organized school before?
Like that all the
We
time.
open the doors and we say, come in. We're going to figure out where you are, and we're going to take you to where you need to be. And Boone County staff, from the driver that picks them up, to the people in the cafeteria that feed them, to the custodians that keep their buildings clean, to the teachers and counselors and administrators, they take those children mostly because they love them, and education is a byproduct of the investment that they make into those students. So we had another unconstitutional. Again, you would think our General Assembly would understand their own constitution. 2024 swift passage of House Bill 2 comes up with the Amendment 2 for the November ballot. That was just this year. This has been going on. They've been trying to figure out a way to take taxpayer dollars and give them to private entities for 7 years. And the best that they can come up with is gutting our Constitution and depriving our public schools and our dedicated public school employees of the funding that they deserve and the educational future that these children demand. And if you read the literature as I have been, it promises everything: rainbows, sunny skies, and all of this stuff. But trust me, they will not take all students. They will not take all students. And the comment that was made about raising tuitions, that has been, I mean, that's statistical fact, that when these go in, the private school tuitions go up. And so even if you've got your voucher, you're still not going to be able to go there. That is not embracing all. And then there's not the standards or the accountability or the transparency. My question is, not that I fall into conspiracy theory land often, sometimes I do, especially when they're proven true over and over and over again. Since we're removing all of these guardrails from the Constitution to basically give the General Assembly a blank check of our money, what's next after public education? What are they going to go after next? Because there's something there that's coming down the pike. I mean, if you've not been under a rock and have observed Kentucky politics over the last 20 years, you know that. So what's next? Is it going to be our public library funding, which is even going to inhibit and prohibit more students from having opportunities and access? What's it going to be next? So Karen Bird, Florence resident, Boone County resident. I'm not a lifer here, but I've been here since 1986, so that's more than half my life. I have given to my community, the kids in this community, through different areas of service. I mean, I have refereed upward basketball. I mean, that is...
Do you have photos?
I probably do. So, I mean, there's not anything that I would not do for the kids in my community. Not anything. I'm only still here today because when I decided years ago it's time to let somebody else do this, my youngest son's friends came to me and said, but Karen, if you're not there, who's going to care about us? So I'm still here. So don't buy the bill of goods. Don't give away the future of our community and our community.
She voted to mask your kids. I
Karen
just want to
Bird,
remind everybody of that.
private citizen, Florence resident, Boone County, says please vote no on Amendment 2.
I think she went over her 2 minutes as being a citizen.
Ooh, good one, Jill. Yep.
Yeah.
All 5 board members voted for the resolution.
And this is truly the privilege of the board, but if you would like us, you're welcome to make a motion to approve the resolution and require dissemination of Amendment 2 facts, which we have available as well. Those are the 2 things before you. You could choose to do either or both.
Do I have a motion to accept this resolution?
Second.
And dissemination of facts as well.
And dissemination of facts?
So moved.
Was that 2 separate motions?
It can be one.
It can be one? Okay.
Yeah, it was same.
Okay, got it. All right, so we have a motion on the, and seconded to accept the resolution.
I only heard Maria twice.
Oh,
She made the motion,
yeah.
I seconded it.
Thank you.
There you go. Any discussion of this particular motion, or, okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? All right, 5-0.
5-0.
I think the Republican Party owes a couple of those board members a censure, just saying.
I would say so.
We're going to move on to another exciting topic. Item 10, recommended new business item D. Dr. Housewell.
Thank you, Chairman Parks, and thank you, Board, for that previous conversation and your passion and advocacy as well. I would recommend that the Board approve the recommended action new business item D, real estate purchase and sale agreement for 8775 U.S. Highway 42, Union, Kentucky. We do have our a second lawyer in the room, but Corey Brown does the real estate transactions, and he's here tonight if anyone has any questions. But as you know, I know this has been a priority of the Board for some time. This is the old Kroger building, and we begin the process of developing that on Highway 42. I grew up on Highway 62. I'm sorry, Highway 42 for the purposes of expanding and centralizing early childhood education opportunities in our community.
All right, before that, do I have a motion to approve new business item D?
Motion. Second.
Carolyn and Maria.
All right, discussion. Any questions? Anybody? You got one? Go ahead. Oh, down here.
I know Corey has been working on this for probably since about January, March of 23. Is that correct?
It's been over a year, yeah.
so-
So nice to see it get close to the finish line.
All right, so tell us what this, for the public, what is this that we're doing tonight?
So this is a purchase contract with Kroger for the district to acquire this real estate. It consists of the main Kroger building that we're all familiar with, as well as the adjacent kind of strip mall building located next door. So it would be two buildings on one parcel. It's a contract that gives us essentially an option to purchase it. We have a due diligence period of 180 days to secure KDE approval for the acquisition, and then also to conduct our due diligence with respect to the acquisition to make sure that this property will work for its intended use. I think this is probably the first time Boone County Schools has acquired a property like this to repurpose. So it presents some unique issues that we don't deal with typically. So there's some unique access and traffic issues that have to be addressed. That there's adjacent commercial properties that may have easement rights across the property that have to be negotiated. It's also unique in that this may be the first time as well that we're granting any sort of naming rights to a facility. We've got significant concessions from Kroger on the price, but part of that is that we are going to enter into a naming rights agreement with Kroger, and that is an agreement that is yet to be negotiated. So that is one of the contingencies that has to be worked out during this 180-day period. So those, to me, are kind of the two or three big issues that remain to be resolved before we can actually close on this acquisition and start work. The plan is that once this contract is signed, we're going to kind of hit the ground running. Now, I know Mr. Razors and Ms. Best have already done a lot of the preliminary work as far as working with our architect to kind of evaluate the site and make sure it's going to work. And part of the reason for that over a year period of negotiating this deal is that we wanted to make sure that this building would work for what we intended. So I think a lot of, in terms of KD approval, I think a lot of the tricky issues have already been addressed, and we've gotten to the point of preliminary approval. So I think based on the work we put in at the front end, I think this due diligence period should go relatively smoothly. But again, we are putting up a deposit, but it's refundable if things don't work out during that due diligence period. So if there are any specific questions about the contract or what this kind of process looks like, I'd be happy to try to answer that.
It's interesting that you mentioned the naming rights 3.3
Yes.
in the contract as I was reading through it. Out of all, however many pages it was, that's the one that I kept coming back to saying, if I'm reading this correctly, it's a 30-year period
Correct.
of naming rights, which you say are still being negotiated, or that's still to be dealt with. I think the Karen Bird Preschool Center would sound awesome if I can throw that out there. But am I also reading this correctly, that if we don't reach a naming rights agreement, the whole deal's kaput?
Yes, that is correct. So
how good of a negotiator are you here, Corey?
well,
He is the best.
It depends on whether you think that the $1 million price reduction is worth the 30-year naming right. So I mean, it's ultimately right up to the board's discretion whether we're getting true value.
This is just for the building. This isn't
So
for the build
I believe
out
the
and
property
construction they
raised
need to do inside the building, correct?
$6.25 million.
Correct. It's gonna more than, I would just say it would be 5 times as expensive to remodel. It'll be, the kids will start walking in and it'll probably be about $25 million price tag.
Wow.
That's my guess, but because we'll see.
Well, they've got surplus. It's fine.
Yeah. For preschool.
Right.
Well, just remember, they just raised your property taxes too. They just did that in another school board meeting. So there you go.
We are paying 4.75 for it. So, and we've agreed with Kroger that the value of those naming rights are $1 million. So it's a give and take, right? So I think Kroger highly valued the ability to kind of keep their name associated with that building and with Boone County Schools in general. So they certainly see the value in it.
They talk about the Bluegrass Risk Management, the new insurance company that's providing insurance. And Karen Bird claims she did some records request and found out that Boone County School System may or may not have had insurance from July 1st to July 12th of this year. She's pretty adamant about it too.
I have an ethical duty and a fiduciary responsibility to bring this to light. The district often gets open records requests, and they're a pain to our staff sometimes because they misdirect their time and attention. But I was trying to get information confirmed and couldn't. And so I thought, wonder if I could get that with an open records request. Because back in June or July, I can't remember which, I had asked for, in the change of our broker for the district, what happens in the interim of our current policy ending June 30th, and we don't really have anything in place as of July 1, but I was told, oh, well, we have coverage through Liberty Mutual. And every time I asked how, no one could tell me. So I did an open records request for, I submitted just a request to Liberty Mutual. Can you please tell me, as a board member, is our policy in place? Do we have coverage with you as of July 1 through the new broker? How is that possible? We haven't seen a contract. We haven't seen premiums. We haven't approved anything. But I have this certificate of insurance and affidavit that says we have Liberty Mutual coverage. And the reply that I got back from Liberty Mutual was, we've referred this to our legal department. And I never got a response. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I filed an open records request with Liberty Mutual, would they have to respond to it? And they did. And I cited the KRS, I filed the open records request, and they provided me pretty much a one-sentence response that said, as of July 1st, Boone County Schools did not have insurance coverage with Liberty Mutual. So we were told we did.
I got a question for you too. I've never done a records request before, but I thought that was just for government entities. I mean, if you're requesting something of a private corporation, can't they tell you to take a hike? She probably just sent an email and they answer her, right?
I'm sure she pulled her school board member card and got it that way.
That's what she said. I don't like how she started her conversation with it's not a good use of their time when they get records requests, but she can send records requests. Of course, it's a good use of their time. And if they were transparent and things were just posted where there was access to it, then we wouldn't have to do records requests, Karen. They don't even update their website. There was still old school board members sitting on committees that there aren't even school board members now.
How many thousand per kid?
Over 21.
Over 21,000 per kid. But don't you dare send a records request.
Our tax dollars go towards their salaries. And
Yeah, but if they were transparent and things were just accessible online, we wouldn't have to send records requests to get the information in the first place. But they don't want to be transparent, so then they're going to have to fill records requests. But they are absolutely, as government officials, obligated to be transparent and provide the information that's being requested. Sorry, don't work for the people if you don't like it.
They passed it 3-2. I'm not sure who were the two against. I'm sure Karen was one of them. I'm not sure who the other one was.
Isn't she the one that was so ticked off about the insurance that they ended up going with?
yes. So what was the vote for the 3-2?
To actually allow, I guess, the approval for the Bluegrass Risk Management Insurance Policy to take effect. It's already taken effect, but they're not doing things for the future. They're catching up from, what's been going on in the past.
I would just like to mention something that came up in the budget committee meeting, and it came up because I brought it up. And I want to say thank you to our staff, to our district office staff, because the question that I asked was what type of preparation and planning, because we just finished up our current budget cycle. We're starting, our finance department staff is hard at work on the next budget. And my question was, what are we starting to have conversations about the district budgetary picture if horror of horrors Amendment 2 passes? And I am glad to report, thankful to report, happy to report that Dr. Housewald and our cabinet level staff have already been starting those conversations as we're doing our needs assessments with our principals, which are the first steps for building the new budget. So I am greatly appreciative that while we always, as my grandma say, hope for the best but prepare for the worst, that we have a staff with Dr. Housewald and our cabinet that are on top of it, and I appreciate that.
And I appreciate the question in the budget committee meeting. Both Chairman Parks and Ms. Bird were there, but it's a concerning question saying we just want to be sure, while we're hoping for the best, that there's contingency. We often call it stress testing in a system. What if we, funding reductions? What if enrollment losses? Or what are we preparing if additional, private competition is introduced into a system? And lots of questions like that. So I appreciate the opportunity to have that conversation, but appreciate you recognizing that in some cases they're preparing for potentialities that we hope don't become eventualities, and so I appreciate that question, but I appreciate the additional. It is oftentimes it's additional work to do that, but that way we're not caught, I guess, behind the eight ball, if you will. So I appreciate you recognizing that and them for.
If
for the
competition is introduced, interesting. He put it that way.
Right. Kind of reminds me of the certificate of need repeal issue that we're having right now. Competition breeds excellence, right?
Well, the schools is a government monopoly. The public schools eating up all the money, get every dollar they can get, raising your property taxes to the tune of over $21,000 per child. And then, yeah, and then you have the certificate of need allowing St. Elizabeth to be a monopoly up here. Yeah, it's gross. Kentucky, get it together. You're supposed to be conservative.
63% of our taxes go towards Boone County schools, and our schools are getting $21,000 plus per student.
And if you weren't reassessed so they can get the most bang for their buck, it's coming.
I'm still trying to get an answer to the question. Okay, somebody sues our Boone County School Board because they ran a political rally during a school board meeting. I mean, what would be the penalty? What would be the outcome of that lawsuit?
They would probably have to pay attorney's fees to the attorneys that sued them using our tax dollars because they can hide behind their immunity. I would like to see if there's something about getting them kicked off the board for that behavior. That's the thing. There really is not accountability. They say that there is, but there is not. We had 2 principals and a superintendent written up on 9 counts of illegal activity of implementing that summit, and they were just remanded to training. There was literally no accountability.
Bringing forth a lawsuit is just going to cost the school district money, and they're not even going to get a slap on the wrist. All the people who would want a true excellence in education, and I mean true excellence in education, need to look at who's sitting there now and vote accordingly.
Don't vote straight ticket. You'll miss school board. Support Jeff Whitaker for school board. Support Julie Mannix for school board.